Honorable Kumar Goda, Minister of Foreign Affairs and Integration and International Trade, and also responsible for human rights. Her Excellency, Ms. Christine Lumotoni, Human Rights Coordinator. His Excellency, Mr. David Sandiza, Ambassador of the European Union. Ms. Asabaran Chobe, Senior Chief Executive. Chairperson and members of human rights institutions, distinguished panelists and moderators, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of the Human Rights Division, I bid you a warm welcome to this workshop in human rights. We have a whole day session, so I won't be long. I call upon Ms. Asabaran Chobe for the welcome address.
A very good morning to you all. It gives me great pleasure on behalf of the Human Rights Division to welcome you to today's workshop. It is very gratifying to note that chairpersons and members of national human rights institutions, representatives of ministries and departments, NGOs and civil society have all favorably responded to our invitation. And I sincerely hope that in the next few hours we shall be able to indulge in fruitful discussions and be able to chart the way forward for a better synergy among ourselves in respect of human rights issues. As you are aware, the main objectives of today's workshop are to apprise participants of the legislative framework and the institutional setup for human rights in Mauritius, identify any proposals for legislative or structural amendment to improve the human rights landscape, exchange information on the human rights actions effected by NGOs and the civil society, and finally, propose ways to improve the synergies and strengthen the cooperation between all stakeholders with a view to addressing more effectively the human rights issues in Mauritius. Towards this end, the Human Rights Division has handpicked our panelists and moderators very carefully. They all have wide experience in the field of human rights and proven track records thereon. From the program, you will note that we will have in our midst a former Chief Justice and Commissioner of the African Commission for Human and People's Rights, and a current member of the UN Human Rights Committee, a former Solicitor General and a current member of the Human Rights Council Advisory Committee, two former Attorney Generals, current and past diplomats, a former and current chairperson of National Human Rights Institution, the Desk Officer for Human Rights at the Attorney General's Office, and last but not least, a representative of the private sector who is actively involved at community level. As regards the moderators, they both hail from the academia and consequently have all the academic freedom and experience to lead the discussion in a constructive manner. They will act as our rapporteur at the closing ceremony. I therefore encourage our distinguished participants to engage in the discussions and also please be bold and express your opinions and views without fear. We are here to listen, understand problems and issues, and see how we can improve the human rights landscape all together. From individuals to government, from civil society, NGOs to private sector, everyone has a role in building a post-COVID world that is better for present and future generations. We must never forget that we are all in this together. We should endeavor to work in partnership and create more cohesion among ourselves. Moreover, youth should be encouraged to stand up for their rights. Government can make policies and create frameworks, but it is NGOs and members of the civil society who work at grassroots level. They are the eyes and ears of the society, and they know best what is happening and what is required. In this respect, we encourage them to share information among themselves and with us, and also record data, as data collection is very important for effective discussions. There is no denying that respect for human rights across the spectrum, including economic, social, cultural, and civil and political rights, will be fundamental to the success of any response and recovery post-COVID. Before I end, may I request all participants to kindly fill in the survey form which will be handed over to you later this afternoon. This will help the division to better service you in the future. I wish you all fruitful deliberations and look forward to us collaborating for the further upliftment of human rights in the Republic. Thank you for your attention.
Good morning to you. This is an amazing crowd. First of all. Second, I that as a lawyer, I'm junior to all of you. And third, I would like to pay tribute to all the members of civil society and organizations which have been laboring for so many years to uphold human rights in Mauritius. So, very good morning to you, Excellency Christina Umutoni. We have been together yesterday for the UN 75. Mr. Léger, Votre Excellence, Madame Baranchouvé, Chairperson and members of the Human Rights Institution, but distinguished panelists, Mrs. Baranchouvé mentioned all of you, so I'm not going to go name by name. Distinguished panelists and moderators, dear participants, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, I had a meeting with the Human Rights Division, and this has fallen to my ministry a few months back, where it was organized at the level of the National Mechanism and Reporting Follow-up. And I met many of the NGOs who were working on this extremely important item and theme in our modern society. And I said, why don't we meet up together to be able to have some sort of a brainstorming on human rights in Mauritius and see what can be done to create better synergies in our actions. So that's how we had the workshop, and I'm very happy for the response that we have had at the level of the panelists, moderators, members of the diplomatic corps, and of course all those who represent the civil society and who represent the NGOs. These last month, I have been confronted in the COVID struggle with a few questions. So that's how I started also to think about it. One was about the right to be repatriated. And when we locked down in March, that was about 18th and the 20th, we created a platform, and we called it Emergency MFA, and you could register that. And the question was, we will do everything to bring you back. And in the first month, we had, in March and April, we had, in May, we ended up with 4,000, 5,000. And then there was this, the cruise industry went bust, and we realized that we had about 3,000 Mauritians on 100 ships in 40 ports. And later you had all those students who didn't have a visa and who couldn't stay. So we ended up with about 6,000, 7,000, and the list continued. And at one point in time, the question was raised about what is the duty of the state to bring back somebody who wants to come back to his homeland. This question was also raised by 200,000 Indians who were based in the Middle East, and they wanted to take a plane, charter the plane, and land at the airport in Mumbai or Delhi. And in Mauritius, we had a case where a cruise ship came to Mauritius, and a number of Mauritians said, we want to board the port. Now the question was, that was the question, and it came to the court, to the Supreme Court. But the case was not, in fact, it was not heard. Because in the end, we gave a date, say that we are not denying them the right to come to Mauritius, but we are just telling them that we can bring them back at one given point in time. So this right to be repatriated when you have a disaster, is it a fundamental right? Now the question is, I want to go to my country. And we said as a government that we want to have an orderly repatriation. And there was a balancing exercise. Why? And that was also raised at the level of the Supreme Court in India, where they said that the incoming Mauritians would be needing medical facilities. But could we, bringing back these people, and many of them there was the possibility of them being positive, didn't that bring the risk of the whole healthcare system being outstretched and not providing for the local population? That was the balancing exercise. And we had done a modeling, and the modeling was 9,000 cases in Mauritius, of which 2,000 would be serious cases, And of the 2,000 cases, we will be needing 200 ICU beds and as many ventilators. That was the exercise we had done. Now, we brought back 10,000 people and we created this sanitary tunnel, and taking people from where they were. They went and they went the test, they boarded the plane, they went quarantine, and they were brought home. And we are continuing to the repatriation. So that was one of my questions was, is it a fundamental right that wherever you are, you want to come back to your country, and you should be allowed to come to your country? The other question I came to was the issue of the right to health care. We see what is happening in the United States. We know the whole debate about Obamacare. When we had the problem in Italy, where the whole system was outstretched, and you had to choose whom to put on a ventilator and whom not to put on a ventilator. When you had to choose whom to put on an ICU bed and whom not to do so, not to do it. And you know the cases where the elderly were left to die in the homes. And when you have 100 calls for an ambulance and you have only 10, you have to take a decision. So the question again, the other question is the right to life, the right to health care. And the COVID-19 have put us in a position where all those, I believe that you have the fundamental rights. Fundamental rights provide us the dignity of a citizen. That is, we can live decently as a citizen because we have our fundamental rights. But then you have the rights that we need, that is, I would say, les droits existentiels, that is the welfare state. That right to health, education, that's where the SDGs come. And the SDGs today are an emanation of the Charter of the UN of 1945. Because it is a fundamental right to have education, to have habitat, to have health care. Then you have the values that we need in a democracy. And we were discussing about what is happening in France. Today there's a lockdown. And in the debates, what is happening? You have scientists telling us that this has to be done, and then other scientists coming up saying that this is not exactly what we have. And we all know the whole debate about hydroxychloroquine avec le professeur Rao. Now, what is happening is, c'est la liberté d'expression. It's to debate. We are debating. But by debating, are we getting to the right solution? Because there is no authority. And sometimes, in times of disaster, we need leadership and authority. And we need authority from the academia as well. So the right of expression can have its limits in certain circumstances. And today we have, if we see what is happening in the world, people running to the streets, in America for Black Lives Matter, in Poland for the law on abortion, in Canada, in Africa, as regards to the results of elections. So why do we run to the streets? We run to the streets often as a last resort. But the whole thing we can channel this energy differently, and the more sophisticated the society is, the better we can have the fundamental rights and human rights respected. If you have an issue in Switzerland, it will end up with a referendum. If you have an issue in the Scandinavian countries, the Nordic countries, it will end up in a consensus. So the whole issue, that's where I said that we should have the synergy between the NGOs, between the judiciary, between the establishment, the government, and then the civil society, so that we create the platform where there should be dialogue, where we can explain, we can talk, we can sit down and find solutions. The more sophisticated the society, the easier it is to find solutions to key issues as regards to democratic rights and as regards to human rights. Yesterday we celebrated the UN at 75, and it's again on the third pillars of equality, freedom, dignity, but it can be declined in so many ways. And the pandemic has shown us today that we come to basics. And what is a quarantine is that you are forcing people to undergo a health test over a number of days. And we do this by law. What is a lockdown? The lockdown is preventing you the freedom to move. We are asking people to stay at home because the individual right to move, to health care, has to be balanced with the risk that individual represents to the community, because he can be a carrier of the virus. And when we were here, and Mr. Appa came from England, and he was the first case which was tested positive, we did the tracing. And the tracing led us to 150 people. There was one homeless who passed away in Port Louis. And with the help of the police and NGOs, we were able to trace 140 homeless people in Port Louis. So again, what is the confinement? The confinement is restricting the liberty of people to move. Why? Because we need it so that there is no community spread. Because once the virus is in the community, then it just flares up. It's a bit like what is happening in France. You have 100,000 cases a day, and you have about 1,000 people dying. So today, I think the pandemic has brought us back to basics. And I'm very happy to see what is being discussed today. And as I said, I'm very junior to all of you, but I see that it's extremely interesting to see about the legislative framework, the institutional capacity in Mauritius. Our constitution, a lot of people have said that the constitution dates back to 50 years. It's time that we should have a good look at it. There are many issues which are political, like electoral reform, financing of political parties. We have the whole issue of fraud and corruption, and we have also the issues of our welfare state, which is one of the best in the world. I think I had a meeting with Stiglitz, who is a Nobel Prize winner, who came to Mauritius, and I told him all that the welfare state provides to Mauritius. To some extent, in Mauritius you have the right to education, the right to healthcare, the right to social security. Our basic retirement pension is unique in the world. Nowhere in the world you have a pension at the age of 60 without contributing 1 cent to it. Nowhere in the world it doesn't exist. And all that we are providing. So we have the welfare state is it's not in the constitution, right to free education, but we have it. It's like a convention today in Mauritius. Personne n'osera toucher à un certain nombre de choses. Et c'est devenu comme un droit du citoyen mauricien, quel que soit le gouvernement, quel que soit l'État. So I was mentioning this, and I told him about the welfare state. He said, how do you do it? How do you have the means to be able to provide so many things to people? So I said, we don't have an army. We are the only country in the world with Costa Rica not to have an army, because we don't have military expenses, defense budget. We are able to provide this, which is a fantastic thing. So we are an exceptional country, I've always said so. And what do we need? Il faut une démocratie en marche. We need to be on the march. We have brilliant people. I'm very happy every time we come to cabinet to say that we are presenting former Chief Justice at this international institution. We are presenting former Attorney General. And I'm very keen on seeing to it that Mauritian expertise, Mauritian know-how, Mauritian experience is exported. In fact, we have created a platform and we are working on it with the European Union and with the World Bank to see to it that we promote all our Mauritian people who have done so much in many areas, including the judiciary, including the civil rights division. So this is what I wanted to say to you. We'll meet up in the afternoon, but I must say that I find the topics very, very interesting, very pertinent to what is happening today. And I think, like I said, the COVID has brought us back to basics. And we are agreeing for restrictions of our liberties because it's a question of life and death. When it's a question of life and death, then the whole issue of liberties, freedom, take another perspective. But I know that we will be able to come up with a number of interesting ideas, and Mrs. Baranchova said, be bold. I think we have to be bold. This country can be bold, and we can rewrite a new constitution. Thank you so much.